Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DMV Business Show. I'm your host, Otto Sevilla, and today my special guest is Tony Ma. Tony is the founder and president of Benten Technologies. Welcome to the show, Tony. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Odo. Thanks for having me. I'm glad I could be on, especially during this social distancing time. So thanks for having me.
Yes, of course, my pleasure. We always try to find a way, even if it's through tech.
Yes.
Yes. So as I mentioned before we hit record, Tony, I'd like the audience to first try to get to know you as a person and how it all started. Are you from around the DMV area?
No, I wasn't originally born. So actually, I have a very interesting origin story that kind of really, I've told this, and this is actually part of why we do what we do. So I was actually born in a third world country. I look much younger than I actually am, but I actually do have quite a bit of gray hair. And I was born during the Vietnam War. So basically, I was in a third world country in a rural area outside of Ho Chi Minh City, right? So this was during the Vietnam War, early mid 70s. I won't kind of reveal everything, but my mom actually gave birth to me in a rural area. And so what ended up actually happening was she had what's known as undiagnosed hypertension. So when she went to deliver me at this rural clinic, she went into what's called an eclamptic seizure. So her body just shaking and stuff like that, and purple, all her hands at the extremities. That's what happens when you have and then the bottom half of her was just purple and blue, and basically she just went into a seizure. And so they had to carry her down, I think it was 3 or 4 flights of stairs. I don't remember the exact story. And then they put her in the back of a vehicle, like a tuk-tuk, and just like a flatbed. And they actually had to drive her like 20 to 30 minutes away to a larger hospital. So you imagine 2 guys carrying a woman that's kind of just had labor down flights of stairs. This is no elevators back then. So, and then and then drove her there. And then once they got there, what ended up happening was they tried to stabilize her, because back in that country, back in Vietnam during that day, it was, they tried to save the life that was there versus the inside. After they stabilized her, then they put a pair of forceps and yanked me out, head shaped a little bit weird. And then the doctor basically said to my grandmother, who was there, actually she left her son upstairs. She had to run back up. So all this thing, I mean, I'm just kind of giving the abbreviated version, but the doctor basically said it's actually a miracle that we both survived. In this situation, they try to save the life that is my mom, and they'll be lucky to save that life, but let alone me being alive. So that was my intro, my true origin story, and how I came into this world. So that's part of the reason why I do the work that I do today. And so I was born during the Vietnam War, and as you know, Ho Chi Minh City, Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City, fell down, and actually we had to leave the boat, the country by boat. But before I actually get into that, so I actually had childhood trauma because during the Vietnam War, you would actually hide in bunkers, because there's raids and bombs and stuff like that. So later on, much later in my life, when I was 9 or 10, I would remember I would wake up in cold sweats, and I would remember being in bunkers, kids screaming. I think that's like 3 or 4 at the time, and basically just being deathly afraid. My bombs going, and then this is when I'm 9 and 10 back in the U.S. already.
Tony, I'm curious. Sorry to interrupt. So this is going on with the bunker. You're around 3 and 4 of age, right?
Yeah. So I remember my whole childhood. Very few people know their childhood when they're young, but I have very vivid memories of my childhood.
And this is when war's happening, bombs is going on. Are you leaving your home and you're going to a bunker, or is it right there in your home elsewhere?
In the home, most of the homes
Okay.
had like bunkers or like shelters underground and stuff like
Okay.
that, or basements with fortified basements and different things of that nature. So I just remember, being deathly afraid. So she said, "Oh, I thought those were just bad dreams," and so my mom basically said, "No, those are just you reliving past memories. And so,
Wow.
anyway, after the fall of Vietnam, we actually left the boat. So we left the country by boat. So if you've heard of the term boat refugee,
Yes.
my family was a boat. We were boat refugees, like similar to. That's why we can relate to like Cuban refugees, Syrian refugees, people leaving war-torn countries during that time. So my mom carried me and my brother and my sister. My father actually had left a little bit earlier. That's another story for another day because of the family that he was associated with. So long story short, we left uh, by fishing boat, and so that was very treacherous. I think this is during right at after the fall, a couple of years. I think 77, 78. Long story short, uh, we had a friend of the family. He had a fishing boat, right? So, or he actually had a fishing business with two fishing boats, a larger fishing boat and a smaller fishing boat. And so, this is the story told as my mom. And so, we, being a distant family. Actually, this was my aunt by marriage's brother. So he had the fishing boat. So we were going to be fortunate because we didn't have to pay for passage or paid very little for passage. So, but anyways, he put it on the bigger, safer boat, right? And then he had these two boats, and they were going to leave roughly around the same time. Well, my understanding is somebody found out, somebody that was paying this gentleman, and he was going to be in the captain of the. So they said, no, we're paying for this, so we want to be in the bigger, safer boat versus the small fishing boat. And these are like 40-foot, not very long, not very big. So long story short, we got bumped to the smaller boat. And so we all left at sea. I remember that day vividly, waking up that morning, my grandmother washing my face, crying, me crying, and saying, I might never see you again, because it was a treacherous journey, right? So there was the possibility that we would never see each other again, and then going and in those days and age, you had to lie to let people or use cover, different types of cover to kind of escape, right? So you go down to the river, and so for us, our story was we were going to a grave site, so we carried some fruits and vegetables, and that was really all that you could carry, and of course, lining with gold and silver for the new country that you were going to. That's what people did. So we left, and so we got to the boat, and then of course we had to get on the smaller boat. Long story short, both boats went out to sea. The big boat, which we were supposed to be on, with my aunt's brother, lost at sea. Everybody died. Right, so
Wow.
nobody knows. So we were in the small boat. I mean, I'm talking. So
Yeah.
I was supposed to be in the and so on. So we were at sea. First, we went to Thailand. This again, too young to remember. My mom
How
said,
old were you, Tony?
I was, I think, 4 or 5 at the time, right? So
Okay.
closer to
Okay.
5, right? So,
Okay.
but at sea, so my mom's carrying 3 kids. We were out at sea, and it was really bad. I mean, water. I remember after 2 days being out at sea, being really thirsty because nobody was prepared, right, for any of this. And I remember like us, and in the South Asian Sea, there's lots of pirates. You actually hear stories of people dying. So we actually ran into a fishing boat, which is a Thai fishing boat, and luckily they didn't kill us and stuff like that. And they actually had fish, and so we actually were so thirsty that they used ice to kind of pack these bloody fish that they captured. So and everybody was so thirsty that nobody prepared for the water and stuff like that. And we would take these cubes of ice, bloodied ice, and we would suck on them, spit out, and then that was our water, right? So this
Yes.
one day. So I mean, I think you can go several days or several without food, but not so long without water. So, anyways, long story short, again, this is the recount from my mom. We went first to Thailand, but I believe soldiers found out of the approaching boats. And so in most countries, you don't want refugees going onto your shore. So they shot at us and basically turned us around or something. That's my understanding, right? So whatever they did, forced us back out to sea. And then my mom, they then went to Malaysia. So we went to, and as we were going, my understanding is their soldiers and others, once they're signaling. So what they did was once we got to Malaysia, and this is 6 days later, they just rammed the boat into and then jumped on and just ran into land. And that was really, the story. I mean, you see stories of that I see on the news, so I can relate of how trying to cross. So that's our story. And then we went to this refugee island there, and my mom says a lot of kids died, according to her estimates. Right, this is not scientific. She said
Sure.
probably maybe a fifth to a third of the kids died.
And
Right?
this is an island in Malaysia.
Yeah, Malaysia.
Okay.
It's called Palau Besar, Besaur. It's there. So now it's a resort, right? So, but it was actually, and that's where you can look it up, and there's some history around that on Google now. And so we were there for about 7 months before we were sponsored by families and came to the U.S. So that's my origin story and how I came to the U.S. Definitely, as immigrant family, lots of struggles, working. I learned my mom worked multiple jobs, and then just knowing that she, carried us around. We had public transportation with, imagine a mom carrying like 3-4 kids, and basically just.
Are you the oldest, Tony?
Yeah, I'm the oldest.
Okay. So even I'm curious, even after her first health scare, giving birth to you, she continued to have more?
No, she did, but she didn't, right? So there's different things that happen in Asian cultures where the man has a little bit more say. And so after me, she didn't really want to have my brother or my sister, right? So long story short, there's 3 of us though.
Okay, but you're the oldest. Okay.
Yeah, I'm the oldest, and so we're over here, and now we're, so she's trying to make a living. She worked her life basically as a housekeeper, blue collar worker and stuff like that, but worked her way up. Just was able to do not only support her, but really a hard worker, right? I mean, she really was very entrepreneurial per se. So I mean, one of the things I think that I admired at her was this is before the Mary Maids and all these other things, and I actually told her this is right before I went to college, and I'm much older than I said, hey, you should open up a business because you're doing something that's pretty. But she was never into that, but she was very entrepreneurial. I mean, she would get little placards and have people type up and advertise for her service and different things of that nature. And she was able to make an honest living and just, cleaning houses and sometimes airports, cleaning different things, apartments. And so that's really how she got me through there. And so I guess one of the things, of course, she was so busy. I was a latchkey kid. I mean, and stuff like that. And got in a lot of trouble and stuff like that. I mean, I think there's stuff that all the trouble that I got into. I mean, just an example of the craziness of the trouble. I remember, and this is her disappointment. She was one of the types of moms that just showed disappointment. That was enough. But I remember, as a first grader. So this is, actually playing hooky. So in first grade, I knew of a 6th grader. So
but by the way, where is this? When you come to America, where do you arrive?
So
so always DC metro area.
DC metro area.
Okay.
So I actually, on the way in 1st grade, the teacher, the cafeteria entrance was also the way to the exit. And I had talked to other 6th grader, a friend that also came by boat and stuff like that. And so, but he was a 6th grader and I was a 1st grader. And we said, hey, let's skip and stuff like that. So this is how delinquency can occur. And I definitely understand because, parents are all working. So I do see the side, and that's why I relate to our mission of health disparities and underserved. So I booked out of there when the teacher would put everybody in line, and I was near the front of the line, and the teacher would go inside and help organize, and I left. So basically I left and I went out, and actually we went someplace where we shouldn't have been. It was like, I forget what it was, like an arcade or something like that.
Okay.
Monies, and back then we were juvenile delinquents at that of an age, and basically we were picked up by the cops. It's like, you should be in school. So I remember being, and then they drove us. So that's long story short. That was my entry into early delinquency. But again, I think that was it was more of just something fun to do, not something,
Sure.
like that. Parents and just being a latchkey kid, and mom just really doing what she could. I
Uh,
understand the struggle of parents, of immigrant parents, and just trying to make a living. I mean, I can go on the stories and the things that we did to make it and survive, but and all the bad stuff that I did as a child. But I mean, not nothing like criminal, but bad stuff. Like things like that you should be punished for and stuff like that. So long story short, came to also appreciate one of the things, though, as growing up, is this love of education. So I mean, she did try to push, and I guess being the oldest, it came easy. So as I grew up, one of the big things was really education. So just moving forward, from the sake of time, because I think it's my origin story is too long. I went to University of Virginia,
okay.
which was actually the only school I applied to. Stupid me. Back then, because I heard it was a great school. I think it was like number one, number two public school, and that's all I applied to. I mean, if I hadn't gotten in, I did get in, early decision. Long story short, and went to the University of
Before,
Virginia.
Tony, before UVA, before you went to UVA, besides the early sort of troubles you were causing there, how were you at school as far as grades? Were you into certain activities or interests that you can remember?
Yeah, I mean, I did wrestling, so I was a
Oh,
wrestler,
okay.
and then I also did gymnastics for a little bit, but I definitely booked, and then also I tried the math team. There was a local thing called It's Academic back then, so I was on the It's Academic club. So a nerd, but then also trying to hang out with the cool kids, where
Yes, yes.
like that was just the situation, and so.
Okay,
Uh,
that's good.
sorry, my son. Andrew, you need to go. So and then so in college, in high school, really, you try to hang out with the cool kids and have fun. So I thought I did okay, right? So, but we did move. My parents did move. I thought she moved me from middle school to high school to a different school, so I wouldn't cause trouble, because there was trouble brewing she switched me to a new high school, so I had to make new friends.
Was it always in the Arlington, Virginia area, or did
Yeah,
you?
I was in Arlington. I would have gone to Wakefield, which is a high school there, but I ended up going to Annandale, which is a different high school locally. So
Better high school?
I think at the time, yeah, I mean,
Okay.
so it got, I was always smart, so I was always in the GT, or gifted and talented, and all these other things. So moving, I had to make new friends and focus on school versus focus on fun, because
Yes.
seventh and eighth grade was fun, and so ninth, 10th, and 11th, 12th, I really again had to reestablish myself, and from there, I guess, was in less trouble. Just I did stuff that parents don't know because they're working so hard, right?
Sure.
But so but again, I got in with some good friends. They were all applying to good schools, so I applied, and I got in. So again, during that time, I did get involved in the gymnastics and wrestling and weightlifting, all this typical stuff, I
Sure.
guess.
That's good.
Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit of my story. I'm also an immigrant, and I came here at a very young age, and I came to DC. So I grew up in Washington, DC,
Oh
but
wow.
I wasn't the best student,
Uh-huh.
uh, doing similar things to you. And I really actually didn't even think about college because, a lot of times growing up in the city, some people
Mhm.
are involved in criminal activities. And a lot of my friends weren't going the right route. And
Mhm.
as
Yeah.
an immigrant parent, like you said, they're busy trying to provide food on the table and shelter and everything,
Mhm.
fleeing where we just left. And, they tell you go to school and education, but, as a kid, you do certain things that
Yeah.
you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, I remember, like, one of my friends, again, I didn't do this. I can blame my brother, but back then, rap music was very happening, and people would wear like the Mercedes emblems and stuff
Uh-huh.
like that. And the way kids would get it is they would rip them off of cars. right? I mean, so I mean, I didn't do it. My brother and my friends did it. So that, I mean, those were some of the stuff that I think, you know, I think it's minor, but still, I mean, now if I had the car and the kid do that, I'd be pretty mad, right? So,
Sure, sure.
but again, this is not knowing and parents just really working. And I think that's the level, I think, of our delinquency. But again, definitely after that, I think, you know, and we weren't successful, by the way, but so they tried to yank it. I think it was stuck in that hook thing and we didn't know how to undo it. I just observed, but again, so long story short, that's the history of some of the things that we did. And then went to University of Virginia. And actually my first summer was actually a very influential point. So I went to sell books for a company called Southwestern, being a bookman. So actually I've met multiple bookmen, some of them very successful. And you sell books door to door. So they teach you a week and you go across the country. And usually you sell in impoverish areas. And back then, this is like the 80s and 90s, and most families, successful middle income family, had like the World Book or the Encyclopedia
Yeah.
Britannica, like
Yes,
thousands
yes.
of dollars, and that was a sign of success because you didn't have to go to the library,
I
right?
remember those days.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
but there was a competing product from Southwestern. It was like a 4-volume book set or something like that with kids. And I went to Van Nuys and basically, which is like a area in LA, which is, you know, lower income. So I remember selling books door to door and meeting some very interesting people. So again, was something that forever impacted my life because these were people that, you know, also immigrant, a lot of them Latin American, and some of the neighborhoods were pretty bad. I mean, I remember going into one neighborhood 2 weeks prior. There were bullet holes on the house, and there was drive-by shooting. I remember I was like, I didn't know what bullet holes could look like on a house, so I went there. You know, I met into a lot of immigrant families, and they would invite me in. Of course, I knew not to throw signs because this is gang territory. And actually, some of the things that impacted me the most is I actually met a gentleman, and he had been released from prison 2 weeks prior, and we sat down and we chatted and stuff like that. And of course he talked about the books, and he said, oh, wish I could have these books for my kid. And he was fairly young, I think 30-year-old, and he would still what impacted me was the fact that he still wanted something better for his kid, right? So what I met time and time again was that, you know, uh, I met gentlemen that were kind of like also drunk and different things, but they always wanted something better for their kids. So education in this book, and that forever stuck with me, right? So that desire to have a better education using these books, and to, you know, even though whether they broke that cycle of poverty or not, but that desire to do it was forever impactful. And again, we're talking about neighborhoods. I remember from there, and then also at the end of the going to Crenshaw and picking up a rental. So Crenshaw wasn't too far, but you know, so that's just some of the stories that actually forever resonated into my persona. And then also I got a chance to sell. So if you ever have a chance to sell books door to door or anything door to door, do it, because it builds character. It teaches you how to sell. It teaches you, you know, so many techniques. I look back, I hated it when I did it because it was a 7-to-7 job, but I look back at it with fond memories after the fact.
You did that for the whole summer or
Yeah,
for?
for the whole summer. People wanted to quit. There's stories of people getting bit by dogs. I mean, that's what you're doing. But again, if you were really good at it now, I think they're selling digital CDs, and they still sell it. And I think recently you could, back then, a good sales summer, you could make like 20-30,000 a summer, 3 months,
Wow.
right? And now the record, I just met another bookman like 2 weeks ago or a week ago, and he says the new record for the summer, 3 months, I think it's like 110,000.
Wow.
3 months.
Wow.
So that's what, and these are for college students and stuff like that. So I think it builds characters, and it's a great thing. I think when I was there, I think the record that summer was like 40,000. I mean,
Okay.
for 3 months of work, that's awesome, right? So
It is. Would you recommend for other students to do something like that?
yeah, I've met and I look at it with it builds character. Hard Nothing beats hard work. It teaches you. I mean, we had to read like a Napoleon Hill, I think is the name of the book, and
Yeah.
all other books, sales books, stuff. Dale Carnegie. I mean, there's a bunch of different things that I think if you ever want to get into the business of being an entrepreneur and stuff like that, nothing beats the sales route, right? I mean, I hated it. I'm not good at it, but I learned the necessary steps that I look fondly even now to this day about needing scripts and all these other things that are and processes, and that's how you scale, right?
Yeah. You definitely pick up things there that you can use later on in life.
Yeah, definitely.
So that was the first summer in college, and I don't. Did you do that the following summer, or what
No,
happened after?
I hated it. I hated it with a passion. I looked at after actually by my last year, I wanted to do it again, but I was just like it was just. I mean, you're waking up, you're eating PB and J, so it's every day, 7 to 7. You don't really stop, and the 5 to 7 was what was called gravy time because that's when people were home and you could close the deal, right? So
Yeah.
that's. So that was, it was known as gravy time. I think it's still called that at this point. So after that, of course, I did internships, got that, and went down a path. I graduated from University of Virginia '96, and then from there, that was the dot-com era. And so actually during that point, I had a rocket ship of a career the first 4 years.
What did you major in, Tony, at UVA?
Systems engineering, systems
Okay.
engineering. So I
Okay.
was an engineer. Uh,
Did you
yeah.
know that? Did you know that right away your freshman year, or what made you decide on that major?
I think once I got in there and I knew I wasn't good at double E and I wasn't good at mechanical engineering, thermodynamics nearly kicked my rear. I think this is the PG. So I basically went systems engineering because I can do computers, right? So and that was that, and it was not all computer because there was also a computer science degree, but this was sounded very interesting, and I think it also had a competitive nature. So the way University of Virginia works is you have 2 years on a regular major, and then you have to get accepted into the systems engineering, which is like a double. So one of the things that I liked about the university, liked and didn't like about it was so competitive. I mean, there were times it graded on a bell curve, so only the top 10% would get an A. So it was done that way versus a straight curve. So some of the I think one of the things that, University of Virginia, some of the kids are known as snobs and other things, but I think they make it very competitive in some of these cases. I think to your benefit, and so I think that actually did well to that competition, and I did love some level of the competition. So to get into the systems engineering, you had to have a certain GPA, and if you didn't, and I know one friend that initially didn't get in, but he stayed in to try to get in, and he ultimately got in. But if you didn't, then it was kind of like SOL, if I can use that term. So,
Yeah.
and that was like that, and the comm school was that way. It was very cutthroat. So just because you got into UVA didn't mean you could get into some of these other programs because you had to get good grades the first 2 years and then get into this other piece. So that was the way the University of Virginia worked in some of the programs.
So you received your bachelor there, and then what happened?
Yeah, so then I went on a meteoric rise of a career. So the first 4 years of my career, I just, not to brag, but the first 4 year, basically my salary doubled every year for the first 4 years. And if you can use the term, I'll just use a generic like 45,000. So if you seeing that double every 4 years, I went through and fairly quickly went to a startup called UNet, and then salary doubled. Then went to actually doing consulting. So it was actually by my third year, I actually got I still have it somewhere. It might have been tossed recently, but my first six-figure salary, about I think it was like 2.5 years out of school, right? Six-figure salary with I think a $20,000-$30,000 signing bonus. This is right hot. So I was like the hot thing. Of course, my salary doubled, continued to double, and stuff like that. And so I thought I was going to retire at 40. At this point, you had the .com. I had money in stocks. a portfolio, probably $500,000 of these other things. So I was on this rise, and then I guess everything fell apart because of 9/11. But again, at that point I actually started a prior company and with two other people, but they left because of 9/11, because of funding and other things. So long story short, I won't get into that detail. And so two there was four original founders. So one person stuck with me, and she's still with me to this day. So that other co-founder, and actually she was across from the Pentagon when the plane flew over her building and hit in. So that was very traumatic. And of course, we friends of family, people passed away at World Trade Center, stuff like that. And so that was, I guess, that. And then I think during that time, I was also traveling internationally. So I was consulting, management consulting. I know we negotiated with like the leader partner for what would be like Accenture in Southeast Asia. So kind of do that. But I think part of what I found out is when you have nothing to lose, you're very bold in your negotiation skills. This is why another reason why my salary kept doubling, right?
Yeah.
From that perspective, did a stint, and we came back right before 9/11 hit, and that 9/11 hit, and so had a bunch of money in the bank, stocks tanked, lost the $500,000 portfolio, had a bunch of money saved because of doing well, lost all that too because trying to restart the business and stuff like that. So that was, I guess, the first hurdle and keeping to learn, right? Continuing to learn. And then I think, still having to rebuild. So there were some rebuilding years. And then we went and I think about 2007, between there were rebuilding years. And we're starting to get good again. But then I think, just starting to feel a little bit burnt out. We were still doing a lot of management consulting. So again, the reason why you're getting paid so well is doing a lot of this management consulting during this time. And I think, we came to the realization that, we were consulting like the CIOs, VPs, and like that, companies like Cricket and stuff like that. And we came to the realization that, hey, we're making, CIOs rich and stuff like that. But really, what's our read? Why are we doing what we're doing? And so at that point in time, we started to pivot 2007, 2008. And so we said, how can we were still doing management consulting and stuff like that. So we did go down this path to say, okay, let's get into what we're really want to do, our passion, which was really helping people. And during that time, we had some other successes, including like some healthcare and others. So we said, why not in the healthcare space? And that's where I think that pivot came, is where we said, hey, let's focus on creating products to improve people's lives. And so that's where Benton is now this day. Is we're mostly a translational R&D company focused on improving people's lives. Our mission is our big, hairy, audacious goal at BHAG is to basically impact 1 billion lives. If you realize the U.S. doesn't have 1 billion people, then you know that we're talking about global health. And so I guess I'm trying to look at time and stuff like that. So from that perspective, that's why I guess we've positioned ourselves and the people that we work with and defined our mission is really to impact people's lives. And it's centered around 3 pillars, right? And the 3 pillars are, if we can leverage time, technology, and education. And this is everything that's built up. We can democratize healthcare and address health disparities. So why time, technology, and education? Time, because I saw what my parents had to go through as blue collars. If you're a blue collar worker, you don't have a car, you're using public transportation, you're working multiple jobs, you don't have the luxury of time, right? So how can we maximize time for those people that don't have that luxury, right? So that's, and in third world countries, others, that's the case, right? So that's one of the pillar. How can we maximize time? The second one is technology, right? So with now with artificial intelligence, with robotics, with with so many automation and other tools and technology, you can help. And then even with things like chat, telemedicine, or you don't have to travel. There's ways to do things censored. There's other things that could be done to kind of really help that. And then the last piece is education, time, technology, and education. And the reason, of course, education got me where I am today is in spite of myself. But again, I think, my education at UVA, the experience I had selling book, and the value of education and families, and then that. So that's kind of part of what the three pillars. And so that's the three pillars of how we move forward with our mission of our organization. But we also have a tagline that kind of defines who we are and our core values, right? And our tagline is do better, wow. Sorry, I'm bad with pointing.
Mm-hmm.
Do better, wow. And we got that trademarked, I think, about 3 years ago. And so what does do better, wow mean, besides being something that rolls off your tongue and sounds nice and is on the back of shirts and mugs, right? So do better, wow kind of defines our core philosophy, what we hire and fire by. And so what does that mean? So the core values the first do is do the right thing, not from your perspective, but from the people that you're serving. And again, this is all the context of healthcare, right? So whether you're a homeless person, whether you're addicted to opioid, whether you don't know the context or that person's backstory, right? Just like before this whole conversation, you didn't know where I was a boat refugee, this, that, and that's just half my story. You don't know where I came from, so do right by them. So you don't know where that homeless person's coming from. You don't know what that person is struggling from, and so you have to do right by the people that you're trying to serve. The second do is do agile. So agile has two connotations. Agile big A, since I'm a geek and a nerd and in software, agile big A is a development methodology, being iteration, right? You're always iterating through stuff, and it's a development methodology. And then there's agile on the flip side of that coin, we say, is agile little a. Agile little a just means being flexible, being agile. And for us, that means, walking a mile in someone else's shoes. So it's kind of similar, but in this perspective, instead of you trying to put yourself in their shoes, so being agile, try to being flexible. And for us, that translates into really seeking to understand and working with the community. And so we use what's known as the community-based participatory research. We use co-creation. We work with people to really solve the problem. It's kind of like teach the community to fish, work with the community to really do that. And then the last two, again, three pillars type thing, is the do is do R&D. So we do research and development, but we do very specific, what's known as translational research. In order to do the three betters, so we actually have three betters, again, three. Better innovation. So it doesn't have to be the best innovation. Innovation is always incremental. Yes, we would like to have that new, most innovative, but it's key to continually to innovate. So that continuous innovation that leads to better outcomes, right? For us, better outcomes means it's scientific, it's measurable. So if we talk about increasing breastfeeding rates, or we reducing deaths to opioids and stuff like that, it has to be measurable. So we have to quantify that. And that's how we want to really move forward. And then, so that's the second better is better outcomes, and ultimately leading to quote unquote a better world, right? So, that we say, so those are the three better. And then there was a famous writer, I think he's passed away now, I haven't looked up, Peter Drucker. He had a book called In Pursuit of Wow, right? Or even Simon Sinek's Your Why, so why wow. So we say at the end of the day, when we're pushing up daisies, this is the people that we're looking for. We say we want people to look back at our work and say, wow, they did work, W, that overcame, O, the world's W's problems. So we want people to reflect back on Benton and say, wow, they did work that overcame the world's problems. So that's really what drives us. And so when we're trying to look for a tribe and people that we hire and fire and stuff like that, we always say, there was a late 1990s Apple marketing campaign. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Apple had all these marketing campaign, which was called the Think Different campaign. It said in there, it said, it's the quote, paraphrasing, I'm not exact, it said, it's the crazy people that believe that they can change the world are the ones that do. So call us crazy. So that's really kind of what drives us. And of course, we've had success both from the management side and management consulting side, but now we're focusing more on the R&D. So we're doing some great work. Like we have projects now over in India where we're increasing like breastfeeding rates. We're looking at projects in Egypt, projects in hopefully in Vietnam, again, going back there, and then also in the U.S. too. Like we're working with organizations to combat the opioid crisis, building technological components to solve those problems. Breastfeeding, underserved populations. So that's kind of where we are.
And this is all in the healthcare space, right,
All
Tony?
in the healthcare space. All in the healthcare space.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with the healthcare, what are you doing exactly? You're doing, you said research and development there in all these different countries internationally?
Yeah, and building products. So the products all tie to, some technological. A lot of them are known as mHealth, mobile health solutions, but then we throw in things like computer vision, natural language processing, AI, artificial intelligence. So the great thing about all this is I get to work with some of the greatest minds in the country and in the world. So I get to work with great people, right, that are passionate about the same things that we're passionate about, was really to democratize healthcare and address health disparities.
And with all these projects, are you working mostly with private companies, or is this with the private sector, or is it more with the government agencies there in different
So
jurisdictions?
So a lot of these are through grants and contracts. And
Okay.
basically what ends up happening is you have our partners are academic institutes as
Hmm.
well as medical centers. Like for example, locally, we wrapped up a project with MedStar. We're working with GW, but we also work with people at like MIT, UIC, University of Illinois, Chicago, uh, all across the country. We have people and some of the Cleveland Clinic. I mean, these are different types of organizations that we work with. Thomas Jefferson University. So we're working with some of the brightest minds in the country tackling tough problems. And I guess why I say, we get to wake up and work and do great things. And the people that we get to work with are passionate about doing that. And I think we're starting to see some of the impacts to that, and we will continue to do that, right? So I'm on my second act, and so that's really my big driver is really, can we create these products and have an impact? One example, right? So hopefully we'll get additional funding is like over in rural India, we worked with some great team members to build a mobile app to help case managers, not case peer counselors, to basically increase exclusive breastfeeding rates. That's been a global problem, to kind of increase the rates to higher levels, because in third world countries, breastfeeding will actually, if you do it exclusively, it actually will prevent a bunch of problems for the child, right? Versus feeding them water or formula that's kind of mixed with local waters and other types of issues, right? So we were able to, in what underpowered type study, pseudo mixed study, we were able to increase the breastfeeding rates in what's called our intervention group to 63% versus the control group or the comparison group that we were looking at. It was only 36%. So we almost doubled
Wow.
the rates. And this is following moms for 6 months, 2 months before, and so educating, so if that works. And WHO, World Health Organization, estimates that there's a global shortage of healthcare workers, 18 million. So this is a huge issue that's coming down. And even in the US, they say by 2030, there'll be a shortage of 1 million healthcare workers. 1 million. So there's going to be less. So that's why you gotta time, technology. We gotta really look at how do we solve this. In the next decade, there's going to be further shortage of healthcare workers, right? Of course, hopefully automation, all these other things will help, but that's, that remains to be seen. That's the shortage that is coming down the pathway for our children. I don't know if you have any children, but I have 3. So from there, it's important.
You have 3?
Yeah.
I figured you had 3.
Why did you figure I have 3? Because
the 3 pillars, the 3 is very constant in your story. And you know what?
Yeah.
I have 3 too, Tony.
Okay. All right.
I have 3 boys.
Yeah, exactly. So that's really awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Boys are definitely, I have 2 boys and a girl. So the girl evens it out and makes it worth it. I mean, the boys are just chill. They're a drain. I mean, I love them to death. I mean, but yeah, so.
Yeah. When you're working on these projects internationally, pre-COVID, would you be traveling a lot often, or everything you can do you would? Okay.
I actually went to India for the first time, and I loved the food over in India. I was like, I thought I went over to India, and the food is definitely much better. I mean, Indian food here is good, but Indian food there is better.
Okay.
I actually went over there for the first time. But prior to that, I was doing management consulting. So I used to travel the world quite a bit and be on planes, have all these memberships. And, I mostly, a lot of it was Asia, but I've been to different parts of the world. I even went to France for a conference to speak early in the days when we were doing some Alzheimer's research and stuff like that. So yeah, I used to travel a lot, but now with 3 kids, COVID, but even prior, once I had the 3rd kid, my wife kind of clipped my wings and said, you're not traveling.
Staying home.
Yeah, you're staying home. So, but again, on the case, I mean, clip the wings. I did get to go to India for 2 weeks during that time, so she had to take care. So in return, I think I returned the favor because she's actually from Vietnam. So I let her go to hang out with her friends for a couple of weeks in Vietnam. So that was the payback, or not the payback, but I was just kind of, hey, you took care of the kids for 2 weeks and stuff like that. So.
Oh, that was nice of you.
Yeah. So,
Tony, how has COVID, if at all, affected your business?
I mean, I think like typical in the research space, it actually impacted. So NIH and everybody that funds this, there's a huge impact. So you couldn't do a lot of the research unless you were researching COVID patients, right? So that was the one. A lot of the organizations that we work with some of the top research organizations, they just shut down and said, we're not doing research for the next 6 months. So that hit our bottom line, and we actually had to get like the PPP loan, the IDL loan to just keep afloat. I mean, we had funding there, but we couldn't really do much of that funding because the research had basically stopped. I mean, where we could, because some of them had more development, so we could do that, but that was really the extent. So I think everybody got hit. But I mean, I heard stories, right? So I was part of EO, right? Entrepreneurs Organization, which is a network of entrepreneurs, great network, learns the scale, Vern Harnish's organization. So we actually, there were organizations that had like very successful catering businesses, and others that basically, I mean, there's no catering. I mean, these were like multi-million-dollar businesses, right? That were successful. People that had like catering businesses to like the, I forget the sports team here, the Washington Reds, whatever, the Washington football team. I think that's the name now, or
Washingtonians now.
Yeah, whatever. And then a couple of they would cater to these teams, and
done.
all dried up, right? So this is the case, and so I think there's definitely a lot of organizations that got impacted, right? And some made it, and some didn't. I mean, some just kind of sneak, as far as trying to get some of these loans to kind of. I mean, I think it's helpful, and so we've been I guess went by, and now I think we're on an upward trajectory. So we have a couple of good products. This past year, we used that time to also focus on uh, preparing ourselves to raise venture funds and stuff like that. So I was part of What If Ventures and a couple other stuff to position ourselves for growth, right? So that's kind of really where we're going. And if we're successful, we would create some of these products and be able to give back and support the community.
What would you say you're most proud of, or what drives you right now?
I guess what drives me is, I guess, finding the right team members to really that are passionate about this mission. And I think that's, just getting those right people. I don't know, from my perspective, the good thing is, we have the mission. I believe people are signed on board. So I think that's a positive. So we're proud of the fact that we were able to keep everybody employed, and even towards the end of that, uh, hire some people, right? As we were, some of the fundings were, and research could start again a little bit, right? So it's still not fully there, but I think it's definitely a challenge. And I guess, who's to know what's going to happen with the spikes? If there's going to be further closure, there's going to be, but right now we're hopefully optimistic that 2021 will be a benchmark year for Benton as far as what we're up to and what we can do. So we've gotten some wins in our belts in this last 2 quarters, and I think we're hopefully optimistic for 2021 with potential vaccine coming down the pipeline, multiple vaccines.
Sure.
We're optimistic as best as we can be.
Of course. Knowing what you know now, Tony, with your career, is there anything you would have changed from the past?
I would have gotten a coach. I mean, I would have gotten a coach much earlier. I learned, I mean, there was,
Business coach?
yeah, business coach. I mean, right now I have a business coach and then also a communications coach to work my partnership with so better communication with the team, better. So I actually have two coaches, a business, one to really kind of do that. And then also more of these networks. So now I'm part, in the EO, I didn't realize they were around until much later. I read a book called Scaling Up, and that's really what brought. And then since then, I found out the Scaling Up, EOS Traction, and Three Hag. Those are three very good books
Mm-hmm.
that they're starting to scale. And then, of course, some of these accelerators where you learn. So I learned on my own, which is the stupid part, right? So if I had this early on, I think I would have avoided a lot of the mistakes that I do now. But again, that's live and learn. So I seek those out. I seek mastermind. I've tried different types of groups, and locally, that you have things like that. There's organizations like EO. I'm part of another group that's virtual called Founders Network, which
Okay.
is like on the East Coast, which is more tech founders. And then, of course, I think locally there's also like Vistage, mastermind groups, all those things. Uh, I think if you want to build a rocket ship then you need to get these coaches, and that's helpful. So
I'm glad you mentioned that. So as you know, there's a ton of coaches, and you mentioned of various organizations right now. Anyone there listening to this, let's say they're an entrepreneur or even a startup that wants to start out their first business, where would you say are maybe some resources they can go and find a coach, or would you suggest something specifically to their industry or not necessarily? What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's always good to get varying opinion too. So I think there's definitely organizations like Gazelles, different ones. I think key is also, have they done it before, right? And there's lots of people that have to, even starting simple as SCORE, the SCORE. You might start there and then upgrade, and then get advisors and get mentors and others, and get peers. I think that's very helpful as you move forward. Yeah, I can't say enough to the different types of coaching and that network to really help elevate your game and get you to that next level.
So it's worth the investment. And you personally have seen the difference with the business coach and how it's affected your business personally.
It's helped me to better realign and set things up. So again, we're getting success. And again, hopefully 2021. Ask me again at the end of 21, but every form of coaching, I, I love it. Helped me bypass mistakes now. So I'm willing to pay the money, right? So I do
Yes.
pay for coaching services, this network. I think it's valuable to do that. But of course, it's definitely it's important to implement that too. So that's where me and my business partner is like, it's you're getting a lot now, but how much are we actually implementing? So if we implement those key pieces, that will actually help us to be more successful. And so I think we're moving. So I can't say enough about getting the right coach that's been there, done that, uh, and maybe helpful. And
I,
then having peers too that are there.
I love that. What does the next 5 years look for Benton?
I
What's
mean,
the
I love
vision?
what I'm doing. My goal is we're creating all these products and spinning off these products and making other minorities successful too. So that's my mission. So I've learned a set of skills and I want to be able to pass that on as well. So we're looking at creating like almost like this cycle of successful entrepreneurs, imparting that wisdom to others. And we believe it's going to take a village to impact 1 billion lives. That's our ultimate mission. So we actually have things in the work to kind of really get to that. I know myself and my business partner and our small business won't be able to do that alone. We will need a tribe of people, and we're building that tribe of both from research to institutes to states to global networks, things of that nature to really do that. And I think when you have a admirable mission and your why, it's easy to wake up in the morning, and it's easy for people to sign on to that mission because that's probably their mission as well, right? So that's the positive.
That's great. Tony, and lastly, what do you like to do in your free time?
Free time. If I had free time, let me see. I mean, right now it's just I love to read. I love to listen to. Again, I'm a lifelong learner, so I read. I listen to a lot of podcasts. So some of my favorite podcasts right now, I listen to uh, the Deal Makers podcast, which is about other successful entrepreneurs and stuff like that. It's a VC and tech entrepreneurs. We're big into mental health too. So there's a podcast by Stephen Hayes. We just finished his actually fellowship program, and that is called the Stigma Podcast. So it's about mental health there. And as an entrepreneur, I think that's something we neglect, but that's important: self care and mental health. And there's there's another one, the Story Brand. I like that too. It's Don Miller's podcast. It's about telling a good story,
Yes.
and I think that's the number one tip for any is to be able to tell a good story because it's valuable in everything. And here's the reason why. In the VC world, when you're raising money, it's about telling the good story. And that's the hook the man. In contracts and proposal and grants, it's about telling a good story. If you can tell a good story, you can get in sales and marketing, it's about telling a good story. In creating a vision for the company and everything, it's about telling a good story. I mean, a true, authentic story. I mean, you can rely on, I think that comes across, that authenticity and what's the story and what's your it comes across, and I think that's a valuable skill set. So listen to, I mean, I don't get anything out of it, but I love like the Story Brand and anything about storytelling because I think that's how people communicate, right? I mean, this is so people communicate through the ages and through the centuries through good storytelling, right? That's what sticks in our head. That's what we remember.
I agree 100%. And I mean, you have an amazing story. And that's one of the main reasons I wanted to have you on the show. And I even have this show is just, to a platform for people to know and get to hear the story of
Mhm.
entrepreneurs in the DMV area. Thank you so much, Tony, for sharing your story. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Hopefully, I added value to your listenership, and that continues to grow.
Definitely, of course. Where can people find out more about you and your company if they want to know more?
So they can, of course, go to our URL. Of course, they can go LinkedIn. Of course, there's more Tony Ma. I'm not Jack Ma, but Tony Ma on LinkedIn. So I can definitely connect through LinkedIn. But then also you can go to like Benton Tech, BentonTech, I think .com is our website. So that's another option. So definitely I do accept invites, but I am flooded every once in a while by certain types of vendors that I won't respond to as much. But if you're authentic, just like you, I think you reached out to me and it's authentic and it's an authentic conversation. I'm happy to help. That's one of the networks I'm part of called Founders Network. It's about peer-to-peer and helping each other. We do what we do because we want to improve the world, and if that doesn't translate to helping other people be successful, then why are we doing it, right? So,
exactly. Thank you so much, Tony. I appreciate it.
thank you. You have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.